Have you ever felt like life put you in an impossible situation? That no matter how hard you tried to do the right thing, something bigger than you was pulling you toward the wrong side? Well, this story is exactly about that. Melissa was never the type of woman to play with fire, but when her landlord, an imposing man full of secrets, made an unexpected offer, everything changed. And the worst part? The price of this offer wasn't money. Infidelity doesn't start with a kiss or a forbidden night. It starts with small slips, glances that last too long, conversations that delve deeper than necessary, thoughts that should have been erased before even emerging. And that's exactly how Melissa found herself trapped in a dangerous game, where every choice could destroy her life. A story of betrayal, desire, and secrets that should never have come to light. But what happens when that invisible line is finally crossed? What hides behind a proposal that should never have been made? And, above all, how far is someone willing to go before everything crumbles? If you think you've heard stories of infidelity before, prepare yourself because this one is different. So, stay until the end, because what you're about to discover could change your perspective on betrayal forever. And before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you won't miss any shocking stories like this one. Melissa no longer knows what to do. The bills are piling up, and the 3 months of overdue rent weigh on her like a constant shadow over her head. Every unknown call makes her hold her breath, fearing it's the landlord calling again. Mr. Harris, a man with a striking presence, has always been professional, but something has changed. Now, his glances last a little too long, and his voice, when saying her name, carries a nuance that didn't exist before. The small signs are impossible to ignore. The way he leans his body when speaking to her, the pause before he responds, as if he's considering something more. Deep down, Melissa senses that the tension between them is no longer just about money. But is it just her imagination? Or is there, in fact, something unsaid hanging between them? The silent game between them intensifies, a dangerous dance where any misstep could have consequences. What starts as a financial problem turns into something much more complicated. Melissa knows she needs a solution, but every conversation with Mr. Harris becomes a bigger challenge. He seems to be testing her limits, hinting at possibilities without ever stating them directly. And the more she tries to convince herself that it's all a misunderstanding, the more she realizes that maybe the issue isn't just about paying the rent. The conversation that Melissa feared finally happens. Mr. Harris appears at the apartment door, his expression serious, but with no rush at all. He mentions the overdue rent, but his tone of voice is not that of a simple creditor collecting a debt. He measures his words, like someone playing chess, waiting for her to understand what's implied. The message is clear without him needing to say it. There are other ways to settle this debt. Melissa feels her heart race. Part of her wants to believe it's just her imagination, but the way he watches her, with a controlled smile, says otherwise. He doesn't make a direct proposal. He doesn't need to. The weight of the silence between them speaks for itself. What he really wants can't be written on a receipt or deposited in an account. He plays with ambiguity, waiting for her to respond without him having to ask. The air feels heavier inside the small apartment. Melissa could ask him to leave right then, but she hesitates. She feels something strange, not just discomfort, but also a dangerous mix of curiosity and apprehension. Her pride wants her to refuse immediately, but her financial situation doesn't give her that option so easily. He says goodbye with a simple, think about it, leaving her with a mind in turmoil. Night falls, but Melissa's mind continues to be a battlefield. What started as a financial problem has now become a much deeper dilemma. She knows what's right, but when Mr. Harris returns, something inside her unravels. The apartment feels smaller with him there. The silence stretches on, filled with hidden meanings. When he approaches, there's a moment when the world seems to stop, the intense gaze, the held breath, the invisible electricity between them. Melissa feels a whirlwind of emotions, a mixture of fear and desire that leaves her on the edge of an abyss. Her body wants to move, but her mind freezes. Mr. Harris raises his hand as if to touch her face, but hesitates. He sees the conflict in her eyes, and for a brief moment, something in his expression falters. It's a moment that could change everything, but then, as if pulled back to reality, he steps away. The tension remains, but he turns, says nothing, and walks out the door. The air circulates again in the apartment, but the damage is done. Melissa throws herself on the couch, heart racing, hands trembling. Was that a test? A game? Or is he also struggling with something he shouldn't feel? The problem is that now she no longer knows what she wants. The certainty she had before that she would never even consider something like this begins to dissolve, opening space for doubts she shouldn't have. The days pass, but the confusion in Melissa's mind only grows. She tries to act as if nothing happened, but the memory of that moment haunts her. Then, an unexpected message appears on her phone. "Can we talk?" The sender? Mr. Harris. Her heart races. She should ignore it, but her fingers are already typing a response. A few minutes later, they are in the building's courtyard, where he stares at her with a look she can't fully decipher. "I shouldn't have gotten close like that," he admits, crossing his arms as if trying to protect himself from something invisible. "But, Melissa, I can't help it. There's something about you." He lets the sentence trail off, but the meaning is clear. He confesses that he doesn't know how to deal with what he feels, that he never intended this, but now he simply can't ignore it. He wants to know, does she feel the same? The question hangs in the air, like bait, waiting to be bitten. Melissa feels the ground disappear beneath her feet. None of this should be happening. But if it were so simple, why does her heart beat so loudly? She opens her mouth to respond, but no words seem right. Part of her wants to shout that it's all a mistake, but another part wants to find out how far this road can take her. Melissa never imagined she'd be in this position. Reason screams for her to walk away, but temptation pulls her toward a dangerous path. Mr. Harris is there, close enough for her to feel the warmth of his presence. She should run, cut ties before it's too late, but her feet won't move. He raises his hand, hesitates for a moment, and then lightly touches her arm. The touch is simple, almost innocent, but carries a weight that makes her hold her breath. The entire universe seems to reduce to that instant. The desire is real, palpable, but so is the guilt. Melissa feels as if she's on the edge of a cliff. One step, and there's no going back. But before anything happens, a sound cuts through the moment like a blade. Footsteps. Someone is approaching. They both pull away sharply, as if an invisible thread has been cut. Melissa's eyes widen as she tries to catch her breath. Mr. Harris retreats first, lifting his cold facade again. "I think that's a sign," he murmurs, adjusting his posture. Melissa nods, but can't ignore what she feels. The universe intervened before they crossed the line, but was it a warning or just a delay of the inevitable? Melissa's heart was already racing, but now it feels like it's about to explode. The footsteps draw closer, and before she can react, a familiar voice cuts through the silence like a blade. Melissa? Her blood runs cold. Her husband is there, standing at the entrance of the courtyard, looking directly at her and Mr. Harris. His expression is not one of doubt, it's one of certainty. He saw. He knows. The look that once carried confidence now holds a silent betrayal, an earthquake about to destroy everything. Melissa feels the air leave her lungs. Her husband doesn't need to ask anything. The scene speaks for itself. Mr. Harris, standing beside her, stiff as a statue, seems to be calculating whether he should say something or just disappear. For one eternal second, no one moves. Then, as if an instinct is triggered, Melissa steps forward, but her husband is already turning away. He doesn't shout, doesn't make a scene, and that is even worse. His silence is a merciless judgment. The building door slams shut, leaving Melissa and Mr. Harris alone in the courtyard. The moment that seemed under control now crumbles irreversibly. What started as unspoken tension has transformed into an abyss with no return. Now, the question is no longer what she feels, but rather, what will come next? Now that you've dived into this story and seen how far wrong choices can take us, I ask, what would you do if you were in Melissa's shoes? Temptation is everywhere, but what really matters is how we choose to react to it. How will you apply what you've learned to avoid falling into the traps of betrayal and infidelity? The first step to changing your life starts now, with a simple reflection. And if you think stories like this are just fiction, think again. What would you do if you were challenged by the same situation? How would you act in a moment of weakness, with the line between right and wrong blurring? I want to know your opinion. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to keep learning how to avoid falling into these traps and transform your life for the better. Don't miss the next content. It might be the key to your future.